Hello world, Kyle here with NimbleNoggin.io, and today we are going to go over the how of Autolayout. Now, how to do Autolayout could be broken into dozens and dozens of separate videos, so don't expect to know everything of Autolayout. I have one goal here, and that's what we are going to do, a very basic overview of how to do Autolayout. And to just reiterate that since using Autolayout and Interface Builder is superior than any other way of using Autolayout and above frame-based layout, that is where we are going to cover it. So you should recall from the where of Autolayout that we were trying to place two buttons 12 pixels apart from each other. And those buttons were actually called button 1 and 2, so I'm just going to fix that and move that to that aqua standard distance there of 12 pixels. So here we have the screen, we have no constraints whatsoever. What we want this to look like on any canvas size, any aspect ratio, is button 2 centered and button 1's right side 12 pixels to the left of button 2. And we did this in the last video, but I skipped over how we did all of that, other than just what I needed to convince you that you should use Autolayout in the storyboard, the where of Autolayout. But today is the how. So centering a view to its super view is very easy. As we know, to set a constraint on a view, we right click and drag from the first view in the constraint to the second view in the constraint. And since we are wanting to center button 2 to the view controller's view, we have to drag from button 2 to the view. We can see that we have all these options here. Now these options are sort of context sensitive from where we release right click on which view. And since I released right click to the top right of button 2, it's assuming that we want to set a constraint from the right side of button 2, or we want to set a constraint from the top side of button 2, or maybe we want to center it horizontally or vertically, as well as setting some size sort of stuff here. And also, if you wanted more, you can hold option for some other options. So to show you what I mean about this context sensitive stuff, we can drag to the bottom left. It's assuming we want to set a constraint from the left side or the leading side of button 2, or even from the bottom side of button 2. And again, here's the center horizontally and vertically, and this equal width, equal height stuff. And this height and width stuff is just a relationship that you can set between almost any two views, so it's always going to show up. So we can select both of these here using Shift and selecting them now, but I also want to show you more about this context sensitive stuff. If we release directly above button 2, we can see that our options are narrowed down a lot from the top of button 2 or to center horizontally in the container. So we're going to do that and center button 2 horizontally in the view controller's view. And to do the same, but with centering vertically, we can drag it either to the left or the right, making sure that we're selecting the view, and center vertically in container. So we're going to mix it up a little bit. And what if we wanted button 2 to be a little larger? Now I'm going to see if there's a way to add a border. We can add a background color, I think, just so it's easy to see the outside edges of the button. So now we are getting some warnings, which there are a couple ways to fix, but this isn't a debugging how-to. This is just a basic auto layout how-to, so I'm just going to drag that back into the center using these guidelines to make sure it's in the center. Button 1 out of the way. And we're still getting a warning. Let's see what that's about. So here's what it's complaining about, which is actually going to go over next. We need a way to set the height and the width of this view. Now, oftentimes, the content of your view controller can be displayed on a different canvas size, and maybe some borders or paddings or XY values might be adjusted. But what I've run into is a lot of the times you want the size of something to stay the same. And there are a lot of ways to do this, not just keeping the size the same, but we could adjust the button size based on the canvas size. We can do a lot of stuff, but we are going to set the height and width of this button to what it is at right now, which is 124 width and 58 height. So we go down here to this pin menu, and there's a lot of stuff going on here to add new constraints, mostly over the height and width of this item that we have selected. but I'm just going to select the width and height constraints, and we can customize those here. But since we want to leave them where they're at, we can add these two constraints. And now on any canvas size, this button is always going to be this height and this width. And it's still complaining a little bit about, so maybe I need to move it a little. No. So here's an example of how we can fix this warning that's going on here, that it actually thinks on this canvas the button's X value should be 242 based on the constraints, but where we have placed it is 238. A good way to fix this is to go down to this Resolve Auto Layout Issues menu, and under the Selected Views section we can say Update Frames. Then we'll get rid of that miscommunication between where we place the view in the scene on the storyboard and where the constraints think it should be. So now, no matter what the canvas size, it could even be as large as the button or as large as the iPad aspect ratio, this button will always be centered and will always be 124 by 58. Cool beans. But what about button 1?